You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey Jeeples, welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer and general Jeep tech guy.
And I'm Scott. I'm the slapstick concussed parts guy that are constantly yelling judo chop to try and get things to fit, which we'll go into that story here in a little bit. But remember, we will always share what worked for us and what didn't, and it's really up to you to do what you do with your Jeep. So do your research, read the instructions,
And please follow them.
Hey, I got it right. Of course I did.
Not really, but
Piece
you
of
got it
paper
close.
in
I
front of
gave
me.
him a script this time because he is seriously, as
Concussed.
he mentioned, feeling a little concussed.
And tired.
So, Scott, do you want to start with what's the latest update in your world, or do you want me to come up with some creative way of saying it?
Well, we're going to party like it's show 1999. Well, actually, show just 99.
99.
Great. Do we owe
Agent
Prince money?
99?
I have no idea.
He's going to be slow today. I'm going to
Yeah, I
have a
am
field day
slow.
on this shore.
Our patrons right now are going, is he think he really is concussed?
Yeah, he is, folks. I'll give you the punchline first, and then Scott can fill in
No,
the
I
details.
think the Jeep gave me the punchline.
It did.
Top of the head.
Scott was checking under his Jeep late last night for a oil leak and managed to confuse frame or chassis with cranium.
Okay, hold on. First off, it's show 99. I already said that in
Yeah,
case I didn't.
you
but
did.
There's a running gag in my family that every time I work on a car, I always get a head injury. Okay, and so my stepdad hands me a bicycle helmet sometimes, jokingly, when I'm around the lift.
And you should have been wearing it last night.
To my credit, though, I didn't get one. Actually, no, we did get several, actually, slight bumps.
Yeah, we did. We ran into yokes,
Lifts.
exhaust pipes, lifts frames.
Transfer case.
So, anyway, why don't we at least explain what this whole diatribe is about?
All right. Well, basically, when I bought the Jeep, had 123,000 miles, didn't know the history of it. And so, it's a 6-speed, and again, like any other 6-speed or any other manual shift, the consumable item is that little disc that goes between your transmission and your engine. And
Yours was consumed.
yeah, well, let's be honest, in true Scott fashion,
You
about
went a little
8 months
beyond
ago,
consumed.
a little eight months ago, the transmission slipped and a little bit. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna have to address that. Now, to most people, they would be like, we need to address that now. And like a Jeep owner in true fashion, I treated it like a check engine light. Nah, it's fine. And 8 months later,
Until he was coming over here for something a week ago, and it took him twice as long because he couldn't accelerate to be past 35 miles an hour.
In my defense, that clutch has been sitting in my storage unit since April last year.
I was noticing that the
Yeah, I know.
the pressure plate had quite a bit of orange decorations around the edges.
Yeah, oh man. But
So,
anywho,
so if you figure it out, folks, we did a clutch job on the
Quantum
LJ,
entanglement, yeah.
quantum entanglement, and like most things, when you open up a Jeep, it's kind of. I think the alternate name for your Jeep should be Pandora's box. Well, people would go, you should be able to change a clutch in an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
We started at 8:30 yesterday morning, and when did we roll out of the shop?
7.
PM.
Yeah.
And with that, we must do a fantastic shout out to Ron Davis of Red Scorpion
Yeah.
Fab Works. Ron kindly let us take over one of his lifts,
Yeah.
and which probably greatly minimized our personal injuries.
Yeah, like
It added a few, but it took away most of them.
the first 4 times I did a transmission on the YG, I used a skateboard and blood-eyed redneck that held it up there and slid it in. So
And so it was very nice to work in a shop. Ron, you really need air conditioning in your shop, bro.
Yeah.
It was about 94 outside and
180 inside.
probably. But Ron was very, very kind to loan us the lift and the space, and even a hand occasionally as need be.
And his tools.
And his tools, mainly because, not that we didn't have them, but it's always a little risky to take tools to a shop full of tools and then argue over whose tools are staying and whose tools are leaving.
Right, yeah.
So we tend to keep it as a minimum. But just on the short part, let's see. Transmission was down by lunch. That was not a problem.
Yeah. It's
surprisingly, nothing broke.
Are you sure?
In the removal.
Okay,
yeah, in the removal. Although I will have to comment, guys, and this is just Kevin the engineer going off on a segue, going, you can sure tell that by 05, 06, the TJ was an afterthought that they were finishing production run on, and their mind was firmly fixed on
The four-door.
The four-door, because just to pull the bell housing bolts, okay, the last set of bolts, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts.
Mm-hmm.
And of those 9 bolts, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different sizes and types.
Yeah.
There are 2 Torx head bolts at the top, all thread. There are 2 kind of normal 15 millimeter bolts on either side. There are 2 17 millimeter bolts and nuts at the bottom. And then on the front side, there are 3 12 millimeter steel screws, bolt-headed screws, holding the splash plate up to the bell housing that have to come out.
And before anyone says anything, everything was factory with the Loctite swipe on it, and
it was all factory. But it's like it reminded me of doing an adapter. Johnny Cash's, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56,
and it didn't cost me a dime. I wish.
And that was just like, okay, that wrench fit those 2. Now what fits that? Well, and then how do I get what's okay? We need a backup wrench of this size and a head.
After the 3rd trip, you're like, I'm just bringing 2.
It was a trip to get that thing out. Now, and note to anybody doing this, what's your transmission again, Scott?
Not Shifting Good 370 or NSG 370.
NSG 370. Make sure you take out the crank position sensor.
Yeah.
Theoretically, it doesn't have to come out of the bell housing, but if you get a little bit cocked, it gets caught up in the ring gear assembly.
Yeah. Which it's actually kind of funny when we talk about
didn't
everything.
break it, by the way, folks. We were lucky.
Yeah, is that when I pulled in, I had all the parts for a left rear shock replacement, the bushings anyways, valve cover gasket, the clutch,
Throwout bearing.
Well, the
all
throwout
metal
bearing,
throwout bearing.
all metal throwout bearing. Trying to remember what we pulled in to try and do all
You
that
wanted
one
the
day.
valve cover gasket,
valve cover gasket.
I'm sorry, you said that, the
Rear
main seal and
oil
pan
pan
gaskets. You forgot the RTV, but we bought that at lunch.
Right. But what was funny is I had aspirations we could do all that, you know what I mean, and get everything done. But as we're taking bits off, which Kevin was probably, hopefully I didn't steal too much of your thunder, Kevin was sitting there going, "Hey, Scott, turn around." I turn around, and he's holding my transmission mount that's practically in 2 pieces. I'm like, I knew that was coming.
This is Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got the transmission out. That wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
And we were being encouraged. I'll just leave it that way. Oh, you go ahead and do the rear main seal. Go ahead and do the rear main seal. It doesn't take that much longer. And I'm like, I've done rear main seals. It's not the rear main seal that takes the time. It's usually the exhaust bolts to get because in the later years of the TJ, you have the precats.
Yeah.
And getting to the exhaust bolts so that you can drop the crossover pipe so that you can actually get the pan down usually is several hours of fighting if they don't break. And if they do break, several more hours of trying to figure out how you're going to reconnect the exhaust pipe later.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Scott had just recently had that work done last year or so when he was rear-ended. It trashed your exhaust system, so they replaced it.
And they're saying, hey, we can probably no, we are not reusing these nuts. It's $7 for Mopar ones. We're getting new ones.
This
cheap.
was back when he had the accident.
Yeah, I'm so cheap I squeak.
Yeah,
and no, those are one things I do not cheap on.
Right. So we went ahead and dropped that, but there was just this never-ending looky here. When the Jeep went up, as soon as we put a stand under the transmission so we could drop the belly pan.
Right.
And then I look at his transfer case shifter. And folks, normally on these, there's a mechanical Z-bar linkage that goes from the tunnel wall to a mount on the transmission, and it's more or less horizontal. It's got some what they call ball type sleeve bearings in it
Right.
that are misalignment bearings, allowing it to rock and move a little bit. But this one is wonked off at about a 30-degree downhill from the transmission to the sidewall. And I'm going, what the? No wonder your shift levers,
I had no problem going into fourth. I had no problem taking magic lever to pull back.
I know you didn't, but it gave us a fit and a half coming out.
Fit and a half. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's an understatement. But so we just kept discovering. And then, of course, as soon as we touched the belly harness, it wasn't that long ago, folks, we did a show about me pulling the wiring harness from the engine compartment all the way back to the gas tank.
Yeah.
And Scott was kind of smug at that time. Well, as soon as we started unplugging the connectors, it started raining dry, cracked up pieces of wire loom.
Oh, look, mummy dust.
It really was. There wasn't a piece more than probably 6 inches long.
Yeah.
And that was just half a piece, split in half linear down the middle.
Even the pre-wrap was done.
The pre-wrap had cracked and peeled off this thing. It's just like, oh, we can't leave this like this, or you won't have a harness in short order.
And the funniest thing is like the piece de resistance, if you will, as I've been driving up to Kevin's house, lately to help out with some stuff, I noticed a slight vibration.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have to look into that. Yeah, I think it's just my blown shock bushings.
Nope.
And Kevin goes to grab the drive shaft. He's like, Scott, what now? Front
Well,
U-joint's toast.
Yeah, the very front one. We had rebuilt the back dual cardian joint year and a half ago or so. But Scott referenced his aforementioned comment about being so cheap he squeaks.
Yes.
The front seal's good. That doesn't seem to be bad.
Yeah.
Well, it took that as a challenge, didn't it?
Oh, yes, it did.
So
I'll show you.
A very huge shout out to Shane
And Dino.
And David at Specialty Drive Shafts there in Brandon, Florida.
Yeah.
And that's actually the other half of the shop area that Ron has Red Scorpion Fab Works in. And Shane runs this drive shaft, specialty drive shaft shop. And unbeknownst to us, Ron just looked at that and he picked up and walked off with the drive shaft, the front drive shaft. And about 20 minutes later, it comes all back and they had gone through it. They had repaired everything. They
Greased it. Put a new fitting on one end.
Zerk fitting that apparently got spit out of the dual cardan.
Hey, in my defense, that was a big jump.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
The ditch at Walmart.
Hey, whoa. It was Tyrone Square Mall there,
Okay.
cowboy. Settle down. Walmart. I think this is 2 a.m.
Anywho, so, and they did it right then and there. And then Scott walked down and he did pay for it. So, but they were a very, very reasonable price and really just outstanding service. So if you're in the Central Florida region and you need a drive shaft, or even if you're not, because they ship just about anywhere, they said you can look up Specialty Drive Shafts of Brandon, Florida.
Yep.
They do a fantastic job. They've done some work for me. I know they do constant work for Ron.
They do drag racers, PTO equipment, heavy duty equipment.
Yeah, there were some drive shafts there that weighed more than my Jeep. They do the down here, of course, we've got the big strip mines that are doing the phosphate. They dig it out, remove the phosphate, put it back in, and of course, there's the huge cranes and mine trucks running all over the place, and he does a lot of their stuff. And it's a neat shop, and we've talked to him, and we may do a little video show there, take you through, a drive shaft shop, show you how they work and what they do, maybe how they build them, because they do customs, but they do a lot of repairs. So
yeah, well, the drive shafts are one of those mysticism because you don't give it second thought. And again, being cheap. Let's talk about being cheap. I'm not cheap on U joints because. The average drive shaft is spinning in excess of 5,000 RPM usually.
Yeah, on the freeway,
Yeah,
it can be upwards of that point.
So that's not where you want to go. Well, let me get the $15 one rather than the $22 one.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
Well, and if you ever want to, just Google YouTube for flailing drive shaft. And it's some videos of when drive shafts break free, under speed, and it's about
It goes from a $22 to $27 repair to something very expensive very quickly.
Well, yeah, it usually slices a hole through the back of your floor pan,
if you
depending
don't-
on where it breaks.
Yeah.
The other one is if it breaks in the front, you kind of pole vault the car. If it jumps in the back, it flails around and beats the piss out of everything. But enough on that
Exactly.
drama.
Well, the good thing is when we finally got the clutch off, you know, we saw how bad the rear main seal was leaking.
Yeah, but it was also funny when we pulled the clutch off. Scott's sitting there going, "Please, please, please, no. What's the matter?" He's just take it off, please, 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 please. And he was hoping that he hadn't trashed his flywheel because there's a problem with the 05, 06, whatever transmission it is, the flywheel for that particular installation, and that would be, Scott?
Well, because as you talked about, you know, they weren't caring about the TJs anymore because the new shiny 4-doors were coming out.
Yep.
And the JKs use the NSG 370s, even I think up to the JKs. I don't know about the JLs, to be honest with you right now.
Right.
But they use that same transmission.
Right.
And of course,
But they don't have the same engine.
no. And then everything 2004 and older is the NV Series 3500 transmission, I think. You know,
Or the
AX5 or AX15.
AX15s.
So you look at all this and go, okay, so here's a flywheel that was only made 2 years that can't be turned and is really hard to find. When you do find it, it's in excess of $200 because even Ron says, "Oh, I get you $140." Okay, please do. I get a phone call 2 hours later. I can't get you the $140
Because
I
it's
can't
not
even find
just
one.
a flywheel, folks. It's also his crank position sensor input disc is
Correct.
part. It's not on. It's part of the flywheel. It's got weird little notches and gaps and notches and gaps, and it's kind of a neat flywheel. Well, it turns out that his Scott's clutch was slipping. Yes, the rivets were eating away at the steel discs, but only on the pressure plate side.
And that was
And I mean, but the brass was just starting to show little yellow smiles on the edges of those rivets on the flywheel side.
Yeah,
He
so-
couldn't, if he'd driven another trip to home and back again, he probably would have started eating.
And even worse is that disc, the pressure plate was so shiny.
Yeah.
It was polished smooth.
With a groove all the way
Yes.
around, a perfectly concentric groove, about 3/8 of an inch
yeah, I
wide.
say the width of a 6-sided dice. I mean,
Yeah, so
wow, I'm showing my nerd side.
it was chewed up pretty bad. So he squeaked probably every ounce right up to the ragged edge out of that clutch disc and pressure plate.
I rode that to the ragged edge of disaster and back.
Yes, you did.
Well, and the interesting thing is that now again, I don't know the previous owner. You know, I've driven stick shift almost my whole life.
He didn't run it to death. You ran it to death.
Well, I ran.
He
to
may
death.
have used a lot of
He
it.
used it up to that point, but I don't know what the history was. 123,000 miles before that. You know what I mean?
So,
But the good thing is, though, we got it all buttoned back up, and of course, it took the better part of the day.
the whole day. So, folks, while Scott stepped off after we had it all down and we pulled out the pilot bearing, we did a full replacement, new pilot bearing, new pressure plate, new clutch disc, surfaced in situ the flywheel so that it was clean of any of the dirt, grease, whatever, and scarring. No scarring per se, but discolorations.
Right.
Then we went ahead and fixed the transfer case shift bracket. Was able to take out. Somebody had apparently at some point done a body lift on the
Well,
Jeep.
they did the transfer case drop
Oh,
because
okay,
that
so
wasn't
they did
part
a
of
drop.
the lift company that I hate.
Yeah.
And sorry, and basically they put every option on that. Well, I didn't even think about that, so I just
So when you took the lift, the
the
body
trans-
drop
drop
off.
I just shoved it back up. I'm like, okay, it still works. I'm good. I didn't even think
and
about
so
that.
we got up and was fortunately the system that dropped the transmission tunnel pivot point, for lack of a better term, utilized all of the original hardware unmodified. That was the big, we can fix this.
Yes.
And just, 10 minutes of moving bolts and this stuff and then reinstalling the bearing in the proper place allowed it to go back in and operate straight without a crosslink. And how Scott was able to shift without it binding, I am completely, because the connecting rod between your shift lever to the Z-Link and the Z-Link to the transmissions, both of those Z-Link bars were racked over about 30 degrees in their rubber bushings. You should have spit out bushings and not been able to move it at all.
But the thing that was crazy is that And another thing, when we went to put everything back in, we did it as a transfer case and transmission all in one
Single
unit.
Yeah. Well, thank Ron again. He had the big hydraulic pump up
Yeah.
transmission lift.
And the crazy thing was, he's like, I never got these guns first time. Like, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is my Jeep. Check me out.
Yeah.
And you know what? I would say 1.5.
It went in extremely easy, folks.
Yeah.
Any of you who have done a transmission manual install, you know that getting the splines to line up, well, first to get the nose into the case isn't too bad, but then you have to get through the splines of the plate and then get that lined up so that then the pilot goes into the pilot bearing. And I don't think we were more than probably maybe at most 10 minutes in the fiddling.
What actually helped is we took the exhaust off to do the oil pan.
We did. And I will tell you, folks, if you're doing that larger transmission, that larger manual in a TJ, if the bolts come off the manifold easily enough,
Buy them just in case.
it's worth it because we were able to lift it, align it. The biggest thing we did is reach up, shift it in transmission into gear so that you could actually rotate. And Scott's going, well, what do you mean rotate? I said, just kind of rock the output shaft back and clunk. Okay, that's the spline sections in. And the look on his face was like, what did I break?
Well, again, I'm used to a YJ. I'd muffin stuff that thing with the skateboard and me sitting on my chest going, as I'm trying to do this. And Dora's like, are you okay? I'm like, fine, And again, I was 27 at the time.
And then it was just literally in the next 30 seconds, it's okay. I'm eyeballing and going up, over, and Ron's like, well, let me clunk. It's in.
Yeah, never
And
mind.
everybody freeze. Ron, get a bolt in it now.
Now.
Get a bolt in it now.
Yeah.
And then because we were drooping down pretty hard on the motor mounts, I didn't want them to take too long, but we had the transmission probably down 8 inches, 9 inches at the tail. I'm like, Scott, you want to put your starter back in now while it's nose downhill so it doesn't fall out in your feet.
Yeah. And it's good. Remember when I changed the starter out a couple years, or about a year ago, I'm like, hey, as I'm taking it out, I go, hey, Kevin, over and under, how much oil's in this thing? There was barely any.
No oil. So actually, most of his leak, we did discover that while his rear main seal was doing the TJ spot mark, it was not the primary culprit. And unfortunately, I will say we didn't get to the primary culprit of the oil. That still remains. There's cardboard under his Jeep right now while we're recording.
So I don't trip on his driveway.
But no, we did get the transmission back in. Now, backing up a little bit, Scott, we did take a few minutes, decided to go ahead, and after the exhaust came off, remarkably well, only one bolt threatened a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
And a good electric impact, Milwaukee, convinced it that it wasn't going to hang around.
Yeah.
And so that's out of the way. Looked at Scott and said, your Jeep, get started. There's 6 billion little bolts going around that oil pan. We drained it over lunch, had it all drained out. So you were taking that off. While I turned around and I said, let me start fixing the wiring. Yeah. Somehow I keep getting to do wiring. So I sat there.
Wire I was doing that.
Okay,
sorry.
No problem.
Because wire you would be, never mind. I tried to make it work.
We reloomed everything,
Yeah.
kept all of the proper positioning of the sensors, and put it all back together. And I was actually really surprised at how well it went back together.
Yeah.
And we even got to the point of using our fir tree-based zip ties, which are a thing, folks. That's about the 47th time he's done that. Move the mount. And anyway,
'Tis but a flesh wound like my noggin.
we got the wiring done so that we could reconnect everything.
Yeah.
And so there was no check engine lights when we were done. Your reverse lights still work, the transmission indicator. Yeah.
And really, I think I just caught the new 2020 thing is out now. I used a torque wrench.
He did.
So
he did. I actually helped him, learn how to use a torque wrench. Unfortunately, Ron doesn't have a small one, so we were doing. When you're using a 2-foot torque wrench to do 7 foot-pounds,
that weighs 7 foot-pounds.
It does. But we were going around. We got him done. I love the look on his face, folks, because to do the rear main seal, virtually all of the TJs have a girdle on the bottom of the.
I hate that thing.
And for those of you who never looked up the belly of a gutted TJ, when you take the oil pan off, there is this steel. Only way I know how to look like it looks like a steel centipede.
Yeah.
Okay, and it goes every single main cap where your bearings are for your main bearings between the crank and the engine block itself is a double bolt. It's got a big bolt head and a big bolt that holds the main cap in, and then it's got a little. I think it was a 13 millimeter or 14 millimeter.
It's over engineered to last through.
Comes down with
war.
a stud, and this girdle goes over that, and the nuts go on, and that keeps the caps on the crank bearings from flexing, which is one of the way bearings fail. So this is definitely, as Scott said, really over-engineered, because it's not like you hear about the older straight sixes having massive bearing failures. They're touted for lasting forever. Well, if it lasts forever, let's make it last forever in a day. So we have a main. Well, Scott's like, okay, now where's the main cap? I says, you got to take the girdle off. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, yep, right up here. Well, which ones? All of them. Yeah. And it's one big, and he's just sitting there going, I just got done taking 42 bolts out of the pan. And now
meanwhile, my hands are literally like, Casper White with the blood flowing to the rest of my body.
And I wasn't real sympathetic because I've had both shoulders operated on. So over my head is not the greatest thing anymore. And
I'm real good with my right arm.
Yeah, the whole wiring harness rebuild I'm working on is over my head. I finally had to let him do the last tape job up by the engine head.
Well, the thing is, it's when you talk about over-engineered, the person who engineered this going, I don't want to fix this. I want to be retired when by the time this needs to be repaired. Don't call me.
So, and then the look on his face, he's like, I'm kind of nervous about taking the rear main cap off. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's...
And he's like, well, and I grab the socket and a breaker bar and go, ping, ping. Okay, they're off.
Well,
and then when I pulled up the hammer to start beating on it to pop it off.
That's where I'm like, ugh. And then you're hammering it back up there afterwards and going,
You've never seen an engine assembled in a thing. You have to tap the caps down. If you pull them down with a bolt, you're going to misalign it.
I know.
So you tap it, and then... Like you saw, we ran the two bolts up finger tight, and then we tapped a little more, and they went a little tighter, and tapped up until it, and you could tell the tone. It went ting, 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 tonk, thunk, thunk. Yeah, we're seated. And then we made sure it moved properly, torqued it to 80 foot-pounds, which is what the specs were. And then okay, Scott, put the girdle back on.
Cuss.
But we did use the Fram, not Fram.
Milwaukee Electric Impact.
No, the who made your gasket? Felpro.
One piece.
Folks, a couple of things there. Felpro now makes a steel reinforced one-piece silicon gasket. No joints at the main cap in the back and no joint at the front housing over the timing chain up front, which means those are the big leak points. So I'm like, I don't even have that in mind. That wasn't out. Mine was still a four-piecer when I did mine, but that's been 5 or 6 years ago. We still did the silicone in the corners and at all the seams like it had called for. But he also got in the kit, although we'd brought a pair, the Felpro snap-on, the barbs. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this.
Those are the most, money well spent.
Money well spent. What they are is they're little plastic, I don't even know how to describe them. They're threaded on one end to go in the 4 large corner bolt holes.
Correct.
And then they're open like a arrowhead, like a hollow arrowhead in the middle.
Or like the knock to the arrow.
Yeah, the knock to the arrow, and they're springy. And what they are is you screw them into the 4 corners, and then you do your silicone work, and then you can take your gasket, and you slide it up those little arrowheads, and they go click, 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 and it holds the gasket exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And then you grab your pan, and you put your silicone on the corners of the pan in the same corners, and you slide them up these little plastic arrowheads, and 4 more snap, 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 and then there's the pan. It's sitting there. It's not trying to fall on your head. It's not sliding off to one side as you try and get that first bolt started. It's right where it needs to be, and you just start putting in all 42 additional bolts.
Yeah.
The key is and this was me. I was getting ahead of myself. Putting the one on Scott's engine, they were all regular bolts, except one was a bolt stud combo. And I'm putting that back in, which was weird because he didn't have anything hooked to it. But I'm putting it back in the hole that it came from. And I got a little too tight, which meant that the pan wasn't completely free to move around. And Scott's like, I can't get the front tube.
Get it to it.
And I'm like, hold on. And I went, okay, yeah, this one. And we loosened it. They all just want to be started. And as soon as I loosened it and grabbed the back of the pan and gave it a slight tug to the front of the Jeep, it went thunk. said, now? Yeah. Oh, hey, they go in now.
Oh, the thing is, it's interesting is because those tiny little short bolts are only so short, and then that gasket's pretty thick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a little bit of
You got to put a little bit of
stuffing.
Moxit going on.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it was an interesting 11.5-hour day.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased to say that when it fired up and it backed out under its own power,
I had clutch.
you had clutch. In fact, he had the little, what? Easy, Scott, easy.
Yeah.
Not only do you have a new clutch and pressure plate, they're freshly machined and kind of rough. And he was like, yeah, no kidding.
Well, that's the thing. I went for a spinner on the block or the shop area, and it's like I told myself I'm gonna have to relearn to drive a stick all over again because the other one, it grabbed quickly, and I'm like, man, this thing's geared really low because I could just drop the clutch and I barely have to gas and the thing moves. Well, now I know why. It was slipping the whole time.
It was.
But again, but so now I'm driving home yesterday. I only stalled twice.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at me like, shut up, new clutch.
Yeah, you do have positive engagement, shall
Oh
we
yeah,
say.
no, I have no problem going on an on-ramp now. Now I'm like, okay, now I can give it the beans.
Put the foot down, and it, RPMs build, and the speed increases.
Yes. Well, now no, the speed did increase on the RPM side.
Well, that's what I said. The RPMs and your speedometer move in sync, as opposed to prior, one would move without the other.
Especially when I downshift now, it's good. It's like, okay, this thing's really grabbing.
So I can't wait to get him out on the trails now, because he's never driven this thing with a clutch that was fully engaged. So he's going to be on the trails. It's going to be fun to watch.
And the thing is when I did go off-roading with it on Trail 14, going up those washouts,
Yeah.
I made it look so easy. And all the other 3-pedal Jeeps are going, man, this is experience. And now I know it's probably the cheating from the clutch slipping.
Yeah, well, you'll just get some more practice. Yeah.
Hit it with some speed.
Yeah. So anyhow, what we didn't get done, and is the primary source of the drippage in my driveway at the moment, was the rocker cover.
Yeah, and that's one thing you brought up that is actually kind of interesting is that everyone's quick to doom the rear main seal or the oil pan, and I was even saying that. And of course, when I get home, there's a puddle into the Jeep. I'm like, oh no.
Yep.
And I said, hey, the rear main seal's leaking. He goes, well, just calm down. Are you okay? You're talking funny. Like, well, I hit my head.
Yeah, he sent me a photo of this inch-long gash in the top of his head.
I'm concussed too, I think, still. But anyways, it's a good thing I slept through it. But anyways, so basically, it's
Everything's fine if you wake up.
Yeah. It's been a rough week, really rough week. Anyways, so basically, I said, okay, you know what? I'm not going to panic. We'll just look at it tomorrow. And sure enough, it's the valve cover just dripping down.
Yeah, what happens, folks, is when, of course, we did all this work, we cleaned. And we cleaned. And we cleaned a little bit more. The whole transmission and transfer case went outside and got pressure washed. The belly pan got cleaned. The flywheel got cleaned. The backer, the splash plate between the engine and transmission was just a massive conglomeration of dust, dirt, and oil.
Yeah.
So all of that got cleaned out. Well, that also is somewhat absorptive, and so the leak of the back of the rocker cover would pour down the back of the head, which you can see clearly, and then it would hit that dirt and grunge, and it would slowly work down.
Now it's got nothing.
Now
to
it's
stop
got
it.
nothing to stop it, so
Yeah,
the drips just run, and then they stop, when the engine's shut off.
Yeah.
And it really does look like the rear main seal. It's not, because you can look up and see where it's coming out up top, and you can almost visually track the drops all the way down.
Especially on that passenger side.
Yeah. So, but good news is he does have the new gasket, as well as the bushings
Yeah.
for the bolts, and you've heard me talk about it in the other shows. A lot of people will just get a gasket.
Yeah.
And that's not going to solve your problem, because most of the leakage isn't from the gasket itself. It's from those rear hold down bolts and the donuts that take all the heat from the back of the head, where it's jammed up against that little firewall divot, and it gets really, really hot. And those things go from nice little rubber donuts into small hockey pucks.
Yeah. Well, you also talk about, like I said, over tightening. You know what I mean? They basically extrude it because they think tighter's better.
Tighter's better, and it's not. Those things are held on, I'm going to say, I think, with about 14 foot-pounds, if that.
Yeah.
It's actually provided an inch-pound number because it's that soft. It's one of those, snug it down, and if it leaks, snug a little more, but not more than a quarter turn at a time kind of thing. And I actually got mine to seal. So I'm not saying that my Jeep doesn't mark its spot, but it does so sparingly and with aplomb. Yeah. Oh, I think I like this spot.
Oh my! Slightly altered, so slightly fancy.
I don't know about that. Now, let's get on to the other project that we did before the whole debacle.
Right, which was the. I'm actually legal now. I now have a tag bracket
With a light.
Yes, with the light, and that's the really cool part about it. Is because at first I thought I tackled this week of vacation of things, of projects I wanted to do, and one is to be legal with a tag light.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He'd been running around with his license plate zip tied inside his spare tire on the bunny tail. No tag light and no third brake light. And we're fortunate that Jeeping is very well received here in Central Florida. Yeah. Because he could have been stopped several times over just by a police officer pulling up to a stop line behind him. You would have failed on a couple of counts. Yeah. So he came in and he says, "Can we make one of those removable license plate holders?" Yeah. Oh, by the way, can we also make it lit? Oh, by the way, can we add a third brake light?
Yeah, I got real. One of the things that I really wanted to do is because Kevin and I, we've been so busy, me with work and him with everything else, is we haven't got a chance to play and hang out, And Kevin had mentioned one time, hey, we can do some welding one day. I'm like, sweet. I want to learn how to meld because I have a death fear of electricity and sparks. Yeah. And what better way to get rid of it is to do welding. And I've always said I have a death fear of heights. You know what I want to do? I want to go skydiving. That's the best way to get over your fear of heights.
Or have a heart attack and die, in which case you're over your fear of heights anyway.
Exactly. I mean, come on, let's just think positive. So I'm like, okay, let's just do this.
I'm positive that I have no desire to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Well, my brother did it quite a bit as a hobby, but he kept going, "Do you want to go?" No.
I'm good.
I'll do a lot of things, but no.
So of course, I know Kevin just thrives on details and
he
ideas.
does. He starts making challenges to me.
Yeah, and I'm like, here's what I'd like to do, and all his can be done. Yeah, and of course we're going through the scrap pile, and we're looking at different kinds of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well we'll show up tomorrow, early, and we'll get started. And one of the things I love doing, even before I knew Kevin, is I love going through hardware stores and finding cool ways to utilize really cool hardware in situations,
unusual ways
that was never meant to be done.
And that's what I told him. I said, we're going to go do design by shopping. Yeah. And we hauled on down to our local big blue box store and just started walking around. And I said, well, first place we're going to go is to outdoor. And he kind of looks at me going, outdoor? I said, yep, we're going to go look at hose mounts. Then we're going to go over to plumbing. And we're going to look at some stuff in plumbing. And then we're going to go over here and look at stuff in, storage, and just we're walking around. And I had an idea in my head I said, are you up for a challenge for a license plate mount with light, with third brake light if you want, that doesn't have to be disconnected and removed to change your bunny tail? I'm like, cool. Okay. Because I had an idea. And the night before, I'd actually sent him a text going, I think I have an answer. Actually, it was that evening. I was showing him some hardware that I had stuffed in a box. And he's like, well, I'll need to buy those. And I said, no, you won't. I'm trying to clean out. Yeah. It's a mechanical version of a cabinet door hinge that is an American version from way back. And folks, if anybody's interested, you can send me a message and I'll let you know what it is. I'll look up the part number. But it's a 90-degree self-closing hinge. And but it's all steel, no plastic. It's very strong. And when Scott saw the action and the mechanism, he's like, "Yep, that's it." So long story short, we're walking through and we find bicycle hangers, square tube bit in kind of a really heavy big G-shaped shape. Those, some bolts, one piece of flat stock, 3.5 inch wide. I think it was half inch wide by 3 foot long by I'm trying to remember. I think it's 16th inch thick. I did have one scrap bar that I gave him that was a 2-inch by 10-inch flat bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bought the one small piece of 16 gauge sheet metal that was 6 inches wide and a foot long.
Yeah, the tag mount.
The tag mount. And with all of that and a little bit of trim here, trim again, trim a little more, trim a little more, we created something that bolted to his spare tire carrier with 4 bolts, came up over the tire, kind of hung, well, it started to hang down, but we trimmed it so it didn't overhang the tire, and then mounted the plate on that, welded that to the 2 bars. One would have worked, but it would have been bouncy and wobbly. So we did a stereo mount, and then the hinge mounted to that plate, and then the other side of the hinge, or 2 hinges, we actually made them so it was an equal, carried this piece of 16 gauge that we trimmed down and mounted the license plate light too, and the license plate, and it mounts to the hinge. And so when he's ready to pull his spare tire, he just grabs his license plate and
flips it up,
and it stays up.
It stays up and all that. And we did a test mock to make sure that it didn't stab me in the eyes while I put my spare tire. It's doable for one person.
Yep.
And just in case, I keep a rag in there. You never know. Maybe splice a fun noodle in half.
Yeah.
But again,
or
I
just
don't
a
think it's
piece
necessary.
or we just get a small piece of rubber hose and slice it and put it on the bottom of the tag. So because the tag edge is kind of pointing at you.
Yeah.
Like a karate chop, like you were saying.
Judo chop.
But and the neat thing is, when you're all said and done, you put your tire on, you put your bolts on, you just slap the tag and lighten tag, fold back down again.
Yeah,
and
you don't have to leave it sitting on the ground like I did if I did the pipe mount.
And the only reason we didn't put the third brake light on right away was he's still trying to decide, does he want to put a small bulb in the center of the carrier that shines through the rim and also would not have to be removed, or are we going to just mount it to this same piece of material, because it can do there just as well. But it's kind of neat because the idea that you see everybody with these aftermarket mounts where they have relocated their tag to center, taken off their tag mounts off to the side for whatever reason, the bumpers, the armor, the tail lights, whatever, and that you don't have to use the simple way that the manufacturer says, well, we're going to give you this thing that's got the tag mount and the light, and you got to plug that in with a plug. And so if you're changing your tire, you got to pull this pin and not lose it, and then slide this out. And oh, by the way, don't forget to unplug the plug, and then set your tag and light somewhere while you take your tire off. And I've watched people do that on the trail and going, God, that's a pain in the rear.
Yeah. And like I said, sometimes you can lose it. You step on it. You do
lose the pin, or you drop the tire off onto the tag that you set down on the ground. And we're both nodding our head that we've seen that happen.
Yep.
So there's got to be a better way to do this. Now, there are some probably better options. After you do your first version, you realize that if I'd move the hinges back where the beams come up the back and do that 90 and put the hinge there as opposed to out at the plate, then the whole thing would have just swung up vertical across the back of the Jeep. And then if you forgot to put it down, as soon as you drift, the wind would probably blow the tag back down into position. But regardless, the key here is not what I did with Scott, but what you guys should think of and experiment with and come up with something a little different. Maybe you can make a swing out from the side of your tire mount.
Yeah.
And, bring the wiring around and get your whole package with the lights, third brake light, and tag, and be legal, but also be easy to work, but easy to trail ride. Get it out of the way so it doesn't interfere with your LED tail lights and doesn't interfere with your body armor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things if you just kind of play around a little bit. And as I told Scott, and I think it was a lot of fun to go design by shopping.
Oh yeah, no. And it was the whole thing out the door was $27. And
that was the biggest thing.
Well, and it also got me a chance to learn to weld. I mean, I did my first experience with welding, And, Kevin, a great teacher. He's like, okay, listen for frying bacon. Well, that's something I know about. And, I'm like, okay, cool. So I get in there and, what was really cool that I was really worried about, again, was the electricity, the sparking, all that. And the minute I said, okay, and I'm holding that trigger and going, okay, just do it. And I pulled the trigger and did my first bead of weld just flat on a flat piece of metal. I'm like, huh? And he goes, that didn't look that bad. I'm like, sweet. Okay. So now we put two pieces of metal together. Again, it takes practice and finesse.
Yeah, he had a good feel for the frying bacon, which basically tells you you've got an even burn of your wire.
Yeah.
But like everybody, self included, when you first start, there's so many things that your mind's running at and so many things you're looking at until you get that muscle memory so that you're tracking the center of where you want the weld to be. It's easy to drift off one way or the other. And he drifted off a couple times. But unlike most people, he never ended up with the big pile welds, the pigeon poo.
Yeah.
And that was because he paid attention to the feed rate of the bacon frying smooth movements. So, but
I got bit by the welding bug. I can't wait to do it again some more.
we're gonna do it again. I still like your comment, which was later that night when you called me or texted me back
Which was?
when you were telling Dory about it and what she said.
Oh yeah, she wants to do it too. No, yeah, she's excited. She's like, I want to learn how to do it. I'm like, all right, no, I don't think it'd be a problem at all. Kevin likes to teach
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun sticking two pieces of metal together and going, hey,
permanently.
they stayed. Oh no, not permanently. Anything thou welds that I can grind apart.
Oh yeah.
So that's not too bad. So anyway, where are we time wise, boss? We there?
Well, I think we're getting probably close to the end on this one.
Gotcha.
But I do have a quick little couple things to say. Number one, thank you for everyone reaching out and giving me well wishes, especially with the passing of Brizinger, my eldest female dog. That was very kind. Thank you for all the kind words. Another thing too, Jeep related though, it's actually coming up on the Gladiator forums and the JL forums a lot.
Okay.
And one of the guys at the dealership actually wanted me to mention this on the show was that if you're driving down the interstate and it's Florida and it's 7 billion degrees outside and you feel like you get a blast of hot air from your AC system,
Nothing's wrong.
nothing's wrong. It's programmed to do that to keep the evaporator from icing up. And they get calls and people come in all day long. Hey, I'm getting hot air, occasional weird blast of hot air. And it goes right back to blowing cold. But it's just weird, because your skin feels that cold air. And then all of a sudden, usually by
This
your
hot,
feet,
muggy stuff.
you feel hot air like there's no insulation between your firewall and your feet. And you're like, whoa, why are my feet hot?
Yep.
And it's only for like maybe 10 seconds, if
Yeah.
that.
So the computer is taking the blender and dumping it from air conditioning to dumping the hot air through the AC coil to basically get rid of any icing that can be happening. And it probably does in Florida with the high humidity hitting that coil. So I don't know if it's timered or if it's a sensor on the temperatures, but it is a normal function, and it's designed to keep your air conditioner working without turning into a block of ice.
And with that can get really expensive because block of ice causes high head pressures on your compressor, yada, 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 leading to other problems. And it's just really best to sometimes let that sleeping dog lie, if you will.
Yeah.
So, but
Put up with it and keep driving, knowing that the cool air will be back in just a moment.
yes, exactly. Please pause. And again, I wanted to give a shout out to our reviews online on Apple iTunes. Basically, Philly Biner, PhilYybnYr, gave us a really awesome review, and again, we really appreciate that.
We do read your reviews, so
Yes.
If you do want to compliment us, if you want to correct us, if you want to critique us, we're open to all of it.
Yeah, no, and again, thank you to Blue Line Special who also give us a great review. And again, if you don't want to become a Patreon, we get it. Again, special thanks to our Patreons, especially Mark over at Wrangler Fix, is take time to talk about the show, leave us a review, send us an email saying, "Hey guys, great job." We love all the feedback.
Share it with your friends.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, questions are great. We love questions.
Yeah, and what I'm really impressed with, and this is you guys, not us, but Scott just was updating me on the iTunes. No, what was it? The ranking.
Oh, the ranking. Yeah, I think for
It's iTunes.
iTunes ranking a brief time we were number 16.
Yeah, we were 6 out of all automotive podcasts. That just
we've been ping pong between 75 and 16 this whole time.
Yep. And that's awesome because there's some 25,000 automotive podcasts. So
And that's
thank you for listening.
That's conservative wise. It could be more than that. But
But thanks for listening, and that's fantastic. It's really, I still can't believe that we've been up for 3 years.
yeah, and our next show is show 100.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
That is very, very wild.
Well, folks, we're going to have to in this show, since I see the little battery bar is down to 1. At least it isn't blinking red yet, but it will be shortly. Again, thanks for all the well wishers. Thanks for the guys asking us, and are we doing okay in the the environment we're in? And yes, we are doing fine. It has been interesting. It's been a learning experience, to say the least.
Yeah,
but we're still here, and we're still working Jeeps, and we're still
giving myself a concussion.
Well, yeah, that's just. I am going to buy him one of those little knit helmets that they put over people who are prone to concussions.
I joke about being the parts unicorn. The fanciful unicorn. I'm going to come over one day, and there's going to be a unicorn bicycle helmet. Here you go, Scott. Here's your working on Jeep helmet.
That's a good idea. No, it would probably catch on things. Last thing I need to do is. You just put a hole in your oil pan with your horn.
Just make sure the horn's stuffed. That way I don't put someone's eye out.
So, again, big thanks to Ron. Big thanks to Shane. Both you guys for the help yesterday. That was absolutely just big-hearted of you and deeply appreciated. Once the wounds heal, we'll get back at things,
I think, once we can sit here in the air conditioning for one whole day and not be outside basting in 1,000 degrees. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's been treats. So, folks, like we always say, well, actually, let me make sure he's got his piece of paper back so that he can stay.
All right. Oh, I'm gonna have it upside down.
Yeah, it's, as I always usually say, and I was mentioning earlier, not just out of time, but we're out of batteries.
Yes.
So.
Enough talking. I think it's time we lock some hubs and put the Jeep in 4-low, provided my shifter works.
It better. So, as always, thanks for spending time with us. And as always, wheel legal.
And tread lightly.
And take nothing but pictures, memories, and, of course,
your trash
when you leave the trail. Be sure to check in next 2 weeks from now for the next episode,
100.
session, show. Yeah, 100.
Oh, my goodness, September 1st of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.